Welcome to Theme 2, Rights and Responsibilities of the AQA GCSE Citizenship course. We're looking at rights and responsibilities within the legal system. In particular, what entitlements do you have when you grow up? This is session 9, and over this session you're going to be looking at, firstly, what are the key words to remember? Secondly, what are your rights at different ages in the UK? Here are the key words to remember. Rights. This is an entitlement or a freedom provided. These are often protected by law. Responsibilities. This is a duty. This is often attached to rights. So, for example, one of your rights might be freedom of speech. However, you have a responsibility not to say anything that is discriminatory or would promote hate and extremism. An example of this is hate crime. In the UK, we value the responsibility of not to promote hate crime over the right to freedom of speech. Absolute rights. These rights cannot be taken away by the state in any circumstances. So here in the UK, the right to life is an absolute right, and so is freedom from torture. The opposite term is qualified rights. These are rights that can be taken away from you by the state in certain situations and circumstances. So, for example, your right to privacy may be taken away from you here in the UK in certain circumstances. For example, if you are suspected of committing a crime, you might be stopped and searched. This is a violation of one's privacy, but the responsibility the police have to ensure the safety of citizens overrides that right. Freedom of speech is another example of a qualified right that can be taken away in certain circumstances. So in certain countries around the world, and certainly in some states in the USA, the right to life is not an absolute right, but a qualified right. Whereas in the UK, the right to life is an absolute right, not a qualified right, as the UK does not condone the death penalty. Legal rights. These are rights according to law. It exists under the rules of some particular legal system. So these are any rights that you have to uphold a right to a fair trial. Examples could include a right to a legal representative in court. Political rights. These rights ensure one's entitlement to participate in the civil and political life of the society and state without discrimination or repression. So these are any rights that enable citizens to be able to participate in their democracy. For example, the right to vote, the right to a secret ballot, the right to join pressure groups, the right to assemble and demonstrate, the right to run for MP or local councillor, the existence of many political parties, giving people the choice to vote for a political party that they agree with most. These are all examples of political rights. Human rights. These are fundamental basic rights that all human beings have, simply because they are human. These rights are protected by law in the UK. The piece of legislation that protects our human rights in the UK is the Human Rights Act 1998. It was introduced in 1998 but came into force in the year 2000. You'll find that in the Human Rights Act there are a range of political rights, legal rights. Some of them are qualified, some of them are absolute. However, not all political rights and legal rights are necessarily human rights. So it may be a legal right to have a right to legal representation. However, that is not a human right in the Human Rights Act. We've just looked at the key words to remember. Now we're going to move on to look at the rights that you have at different ages in the UK. I'm going to ask you to guess the age you can gain these rights in the UK. What I'll do is I'll read a bunch of rights out for you, and you must guess what age that you get those rights here in the UK. I would also suggest you write notes whilst we do this. Maybe pick 2 or 3 rights from each category so that you have a range of rights and you know at which age you get those rights. You can have your ears pierced, but your parent may have to be with you. You can choose your own religion. You can be convicted of a criminal offence. If you are a boy, you can be convicted of a sexual offence, including rape. Try and guess what age you might get these entitlements. 10 years old. You can watch a 12 or 12A film or play a 12 category computer game. You can be remanded into a secure unit or secure training facility for persistent offending. You can be placed on an electronically monitored curfew while you're awaiting a court decision. 12 years old. You can have a part-time job with some restrictions. You can have an account on a social networking site like Facebook or Twitter. 13 years old. You can be fined £20 for not fastening your seatbelt while in a moving car. You can enter a pub if the landlord allows it, but you cannot buy or drink alcohol, only soft drinks. 14 years old. You may be remanded to a prison to await trial. If you are convicted of a criminal offence, you can be fined up to £1,000 and sentenced to prison time. You can rent and buy a 15 category film. 15 years old. On the last slide, I went up in age. On this slide, I'm going to mix it up a bit, so continue to try and guess the ages and continue to write notes with a few bits of information about the different entitlements you get and at which age. You can work full-time if you have left school, have a national insurance number and the job has accredited training. You can give consent and have sex. You can be married or live together with a parent's permission. You can be prosecuted for having sex with someone who is under 16. You can apply for your own passport with a parent's consent. 16 years old. You can drive certain kinds of larger vehicles like lorries or buses with the appropriate licence. You are now entitled to full national minimum wage. You can apply to adopt a child. You can get certain types of jobs, for example, become a driving instructor. You can apply for a licence to fly commercial transport aeroplanes, helicopters, gyroplanes and airships. You can go into 21 plus venues, some pubs, clubs and bars. 21 years old. You can no longer get support to help you get into work or college unless you have a learning difficulty or disability. You are no longer entitled to free full-time education at school. 19 years old. You've reached the age of majority, that is, you are an adult. You can have a tattoo or body piercing. You can watch an 18 film, play an 18 computer game. National minimum wage entitlement increases. You can get a check card and credit card. You can change your name. You can vote and be called for jury service. You can buy and drink alcohol in a bar. You can get married, enter a civil partnership or live together without parental consent. You can stand as an MP or a local councillor. 18 years old. Some benefit entitlements change. Support ends for young people who have been in local authority care who went on into higher education. Young people with learning difficulties and disabilities can no longer get support from Young People's Services. 25 years old. You can hold a driver's licence and apply for a motorcycle licence. You can be interviewed by the police without an appropriate adult being present. A care order can no longer be made on you. 17 years old. You are no longer eligible for Care to Learn. You are no longer able to access most services for young people unless you have learning difficulties or disabilities. 20 years old. Support ends for young people who have been in local authority care unless they are going into higher education. 22 years old. We've come to the end of session 9 where we've looked at a range of rights. It also showed the entitlements you may lose as you grow up and therefore the responsibilities that you may have as you grow older in the UK. Please remember to like videos and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.